Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the spring virtual meeting of ACRL's Digital Scholarship Center Interest Group. I want to thank you all for being here. I hope that some of you are kind of returnees from our fall virtual meeting. I hope you enjoyed that. I think we have a great session for you today. My name is Stephen Bell, one of the co-conveners of this interest group. What's in a name? What do you call your Digital Scholarship Center is our topic for today. And I think one of the best ways to learn about digital scholarship centers is to actually go and visit them and talk to the people there and find out what they're doing. Some of us don't always have those opportunities. So I think this is going to be a great session today because we're going to be hearing from our special guests, Justin Schell and Brian Sinclair. And they're actually going to tell us a lot more about what their centers are doing, what they look like. They'll have some examples for us and why they don't call them digital scholarship centers. Our session today is going to be moderated by Maris Mandernack, and Maris is going to also be the incoming convener for the Digital Scholarship Interest Group after ALA Annual. Just a little bit about myself and Marinda. Unfortunately, Marinda was not able to join us today, but we're fortunate to have Maris here today. She will be our moderator, and she will be introducing the speakers and then telling us a little bit more about today's session and what we hope to accomplish. And then she'll be sharing just a couple of things about the Digital Scholarship Center Interest Group, some of the things that we're doing and some of the things to look forward to. So again, thanks for being here. I will, at the end of the session, or about 5 minutes before, in the chat box, I will share a link to an evaluation form. And if you can take a minute or two to fill that out, we would greatly appreciate your feedback. Maris, I'm going to pass the ball along to you now, and then please take over.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephen. Okay, I am going to introduce our guest speakers today. First, we're going to hear from Brian Sinclair, who's the Associate Dean for Public Services at Georgia State University. And in that role, he provides leadership for public services, including research support, research data services, instruction, user services, and technology support. Today, he will be talking about CURV, the Collaborative University Research and Visualization Environment, which supports collaborative interdisciplinary visualization research. Then after he's finished, we'll hear from Justin Schell, who is a learning design specialist from the University of Michigan Libraries. He's going to discuss their design lab in the Shapiro Undergraduate Library, where digital scholarship intersects with engaged learning. So today in our conversation, we're going to learn more about digital scholarship centers, why we pick one name over another, what's happening and how it impacts what we call it, so physically what's happening in the space, and then how that impacts use and marketing. So I encourage everyone to share your questions via the chat box. I'm going to go ahead and gather those as our presenters are chatting, talking about their respective digital scholarship centers, and I will intercede at the end with those and provide some summary comments. Okay, the Digital Scholarship Center Interest Group did conduct a survey, and we were asking folks, what are you actually calling your Digital Scholarship Center? So here at Ohio State, we call ours the Research Commons, and you'll see some variations that exist along those lines as well. And that from that survey, which was shared via the listserv, 4 indicated Digital Scholarship Lab, 4 indicated Digital Scholarship Commons, 5 were Digital Scholarship Center, and you'll see some of those others that are at the bottom there of, you know, what it is they're doing and how it's focusing sort of on their research interests and areas of service specialty. So a little bit about ACRL Digital Scholarship Center Interest Group. We are a relatively new interest group. This is our second year in existence, and the intent is to share knowledge about the development of services and these new digital scholarship centers as entities, so a suite of services. And it might, at midwinter, we realized about half of the people participating had a physical space, and the other people, about a quarter, were planning a physical space, and the other mixture said, oh, we're not planning, we just have this suite of services, and we're trying to figure out how best to package it. So offer some forums so that folks can wrestle with the development process of the centers, talk about where individuals have succeeded and what sort of challenges they're encountering, and then talk about current trends, look at case studies, explore innovative best practices, and talk about those partnerships that we have both with faculty as well as other campus partners who might be providing services that enhance scholarship. We are available as an interest group that you can join as part of your membership, so you can see that on ALA Connect. We do have a discussion list that you can also sign up for, and we have seen a tremendous growth since our last in-person of folks subscribing to that listserv. So if you are not a member of the listserv, be sure to join. And finally, looking ahead, we have a very exciting program planned during annual this year, and it will be on Saturday, June 25th at 10:30 in the Convention Center. And starting the program from scratch, so building your Digital Scholarship Center program. And we'll hear from 3 different entities that have built theirs, a small, medium, and a large, at various points in their design process. As I did mention earlier, that data gathering and inventory project survey that went out via a couple of different listservs, the report was just released this last week, and that is now available. We are in the process of planning our fall virtual meeting. If you do have suggestions, feel free to add those to the listserv, and I'm sure we'll be having some exciting things coming up at midwinter in 2017. Okay, as Stephen mentioned, he will be coming into the chat box with the evaluation at the end. We would love to have your feedback, as that will help inform future webinars and in-person programs. And with that, I'm getting ready to pass it over to Brian, but I do want to encourage folks to put their questions into the chat box, and I will gather those as we go. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Maris, and thanks, Stephen, for inviting me today to speak to the interest group. I'll tell you a little bit about CURV. Let me know if I'm too loud or if I'm going too fast. I'm monitoring the chat. So this is CURV. It's located in our main library in downtown Atlanta. Our grand opening was in fall 2014, so we'll be celebrating 2 years next fall. And our centerpiece technology is a 24-foot visualization wall that we call the Interact wall. It has a touch interface, and we like to talk about pixels. So it's 25 million active pixels if you're keeping score at your library. It started off as a concept, a white paper for a GIS geospatial core in our main library, but it really did take off when we started planning and talking to campus administrators. GIS is still a major focus and maps are still a major focus. This is a grad student in public health, master's public health program presenting on his findings. So maps are still critical to what we do. We talk about CURV in terms of supporting digital scholarship, and a large percentage of our users are in the humanities, and they're our biggest fans. But through CURV, we are seeking new connections with the natural and computational sciences, the social sciences, and also new transdisciplinary connections. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about CURV with pictures and not words, although I'm going to talk over them. CURV is an innovative high-tech space where students can analyze high-res microscopic images. It's where a faculty author, such as this one, can give a book talk with engaging visuals and multimedia. It's where an anthropology professor can take students on a virtual field trip to Mayan ruins. Some of you have seen these slides before. I know some of you on this group today. But it's also where geologists can gather to analyze sediment cores that date back 4.5 million years. And this is a group of researchers from various universities that gathered in Curve just recently and analyzed them in minute detail on our Interact wall. And it's where student hackers, these are our Panther hackers. We are Georgia State University Panthers. These are our Panther hackers. They gather weekly for these impromptu coding sessions. They learn to code and hack. Here they're learning Python. And here they are learning to build apps for their smartphones. And here's a student teaching other students how to code for Android Studio. This happened just last week. I took a picture of him. And it's a space where formal workshops can happen involving students, faculty, and staff. This happens to be a session on the Bloomberg Terminal. This may be the largest Bloomberg terminal in the world. We had a session with faculty and students and great attendance. So business data as well. And here's a librarian giving one of her famous workshops on text mining and qualitative research methods. Mandy Swigart-Hobaugh is our qualitative research expert, and she has gained a reputation for her in vivo knowledge. So here's a very popular workshop in Curve on that. And it's a place where students can instruct other students on data visualization tools, or where students can gain hands-on skills building databases with interactive tables and maps. And it's even a space where students can build a drone. Although Curve is not a makerspace, we don't market it as such. Things do get made in there, and we have little control over that. So we do see students bring in their Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and things like that. But and also drones are now grounded at our university. We're right by the Capitol, so this is in a closet right now, I think. So. It's a space where students can work with artifacts and objects and create 3D models. This is using Agisoft PhotoScan and some photogrammetry techniques students are learning. This is the latest thing that I've gotten interested in with an art history professor here. This is where students can experiment with the Oculus and other headsets in virtual reality. This is art history professor Glenn Gunhouse, who is taking a student on a virtual, actually a staff member, I believe, a virtual tour of Rome. And here is a student in the Pantheon in Rome looking up at the dome. So that just kind of gives you a very broad introduction to Curve. So what is Curve? It's an acronym. I'll let you take a look at the mission. I will point out it's technology rich. It supports research and digital scholarship, but it's not what I would consider a traditional, if you can call a digital scholarship center a digital scholarship center. It's a little bit more than that, but I know we're all trying to figure this out. This is the layout of Curve. As you can see, a lot of what we put into Curve actually were the result of focus groups we held with primarily grad students and faculty. We didn't have a lot of undergrads come, but we had about 40 grad students and faculty come to our focus groups. And 3D modeling was very big in a few disciplines, so we did set aside some space for that. But several collaborative workstations, and the green circle there in the middle upper part, that is the Interact wall. There's a Linux workstation for the researchers if they wanted that. It is rarely used, I will point out. And then there are several Mac Pros and PCs that you can actually dual boot into Linux if someone wanted to. Not very popular, but we did it because our focus group said they wanted it. So I see Curve and as a three-way intersection of three distinct areas. And maybe these three areas are blending. But for us, digital scholarship support, research data services, and also a little bit of research computing, because we have some very nice machines in that space for doing 3D modeling and other applications. So first of all, let me talk about how CURV supports digital scholarship and services around that. Of course, this is not my library. This is University of Oregon libraries, but this gives us a good sense of the types of things we are working on developing currently. We are building the staffing model and the infrastructure to support more digital projects and present them in this way. I'd also point out another great example right close by is the Emory Center of Digital Scholarship right down the road. This is a place where we can facilitate and showcase new types of scholarship. Now, previously we were very hung up on storage and hosting and the care and feeding of faculty websites, but it's evolving more into a consulting and facilitating role, linking scholars with existing services. I do see a role for us as corralling all this. We have lots of digital projects happening, not under the umbrella or auspices of the library per se, but a role for us is to kind of corral all that. We're very interested in exploring cloud services like AWS, hosted solutions like Reclaim Hosting, Omeka, Esri Story Maps. So that is a major focus right now, and this is what we are currently building the staffing to explore even further. So it is a great model. Second, CURV supports what I call research data services. Again, we're blending these things, but in my mind, the digital scholarship I showed in the previous slide, by and large, supports digital humanists. I know that's not always true, but it has been true up until now. And a lot of this GIS and quantitative and survey development, a lot of it supports social sciences. So it's really great to bring them together because they're all becoming blended anyway. But CURV supports the research data services primarily right now through providing the tools and the staffing. I mentioned our quantitative person a minute ago. We also have a GIS librarian who does great work with faculty. But this is providing the data analysis tools. It's really focused on the software tools and how to use them. And it brings together statisticians, GIS experts. Some great examples, NYU, again, also data management is a critical part of this, but only part of it. NYU here, also the outstanding services at Duke University Libraries. I'm intrigued by the University of Washington Data Science Studio, which seems to be a partnership between the campus central IT, research computing, and the library and faculty and others. And then thirdly, CURV supports what I've again traditionally called research computing services by working and they support a great deal of what research computing is. Supports the hard sciences, computational, natural, biomedical. This is very hardware centric, high-speed processors, high-end GPUs for generating 3D models, technical computing applications. So for example, we had a faculty member just the other day who was trying to run a program in Wolfram Mathematica, and his computer, he's in mathematics, couldn't handle it. And we have nice machines in CURV that can, so he just walked over to CURV and ran his program. Also molecular modeling and the like. And we have, there are great opportunities here for libraries and our own to partner with research computing to run these graphics-intensive applications locally in your center or through the compute cluster you have at your campus. Great opportunities here. The biggest draw to CURV when we opened is we bought some pretty high-end GPUs and those PCs, and it drew all the computer science students over immediately to play. So those are the three areas that we are really focusing on, and of course they all are probably just going to blend together with all the other services we do. But really, this is something I'm thinking about. These are just labels and buckets. I'm not sure if our researcher students, digital scholars, are concerned as much about labels and buckets as we are, or on who on campus does what. I think libraries are trying to reinvent ourselves to serve ways, but I think the partnerships are key. And ultimately, these centers, regardless of what we put in them, or what labels we put on them or call them, or what services our menu of services, signal a direction for academic libraries as a whole and what the future library will be. making connections with digital content, connecting researchers with digital content. It's really about the people, the talented, skilled librarians, data scientists, et cetera, creative people we hire to employ. We employ and train to do these. And I keep hearing about the death of the specialist, but I think the specialist is still very much in demand, but a specialist who is very flexible and intellectually curious and able to address different areas of need. And while, and I'll wrap up with this, while it's not always about the technology, this is an early grouping curve using dry erase marker boards. It's not always about the technology. Ultimately, we have a critical role to play on campus, our service model in particular, in providing the staffing, facilities, technology, hardware, and content needed in support of these new forms of digital scholarship, research, and learning. So with that, I am turning it over to Justin. All right, Justin.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Someone moved the ball to next to me. So great. Well, that was super cool. I don't know if it was you talked about Curve at DLF a couple years ago, but super jealous of that video wall. As you probably have guessed, I'm Justin Schell. I run one design lab here at the University of Michigan Library, the Shapiro Design Lab, which is an undergraduate library. But we'll talk about some of the history of the design labs here at Michigan, which go further back, well beyond when I was here, and some of the foundations that we are working with, foundations we're working with and working together across campus to serve different kinds of communities through these design labs. That is our unofficial mascot, the Design Labrador, that you see on here. We still haven't named him or her. Dory is an unofficial name, but we're hoping to do a little naming contest for that. So one of the overall sort of lenses for these design labs and other spaces in the library is this idea of engaged learning. And there are 5 engaged learning competencies that Michigan has developed to sort of structure what they consider as the engaged learning process. Hold on one second, I have to go answer the door. Okay. Sorry, okay, I'm back now. Someone need to drop off a upholstered foam block that we got for the lab, which I'll explain in a little bit. Where was I? So these engaged learning competencies include creativity, and so that people can understand that creativity is not just something for the gifted few, but is something that everyone can cultivate. Intercultural intelligence, that the people who are learning at Michigan need to understand the role of values and culture in driving decisions and develop the flexibility in working with others that may have different values. That social civic responsibility and ethical reasoning, that they should develop understanding of the human, social, and environmental impacts of these actions and think about the sort of ethical dimensions of what they're doing, not just trying to build the next new startup, but what are the ethics involved in contributing to something like the Uberification of America. Thinking about communication, collaboration, and teamwork. So students having the ability to communicate with many audiences and to utilize these sort of varied formats and styles that will most effectively convey what they want to convey. So again, going back to the other things, involving other kinds of people, being able to collaborate and not just think of yourself as one person building this thing by yourself, whatever that thing might be. At the same time, knowing that you have this sort of agency to innovate, to take risks, be able to seek out and create the opportunities, within the university, beyond the university, to really be able to, make and sustain positive change, and whatever that might look like. I'll talk a little bit more about these different kinds of values as they manifest in the spaces. So I first want to talk a little bit about the history. And So in the Digital Media Commons, which is in North Campus, this is a different part of campus. There are 3 areas in Michigan: North Campus, Central Campus, and South Campus. North Campus is the arts, architecture, engineering, design part of campus. And that was purpose-built. And the Digital Media Commons is in the Duderstadt Center, which is a library production facility that has a number of different spaces, including our 3D lab, our Groundworks, which is our media production hub. We have the Design Lab 1 and Design Lab 3. And Design Lab 1, depending on who you talk to, could go back 15 or 20 years. So my colleague Linda Knox has been running that space for a number of years and built a wonderful sort of community learning and community developed space on North Campus in the Duderstadt Center. And so I'll talk about a couple different ways and a few different projects that they have fostered over the years and some of the themes that they've worked on. So one of the themes is it's open pedagogy. And you can see on the right side that there are 2 different classes in there. The space can't be reserved for just one thing. So intentionally, you can have the sort of overlap between multiple classes, in a School of Music Design class and Art and Design Studio class. What can happen when they're working together in a sort of serendipitous way? And so what happened here with Takumi, who is a student design intern in the space, an instructor for one class overheard him working with his own class and said, hey, can you come over and talk to my class about that? And so that was the sort of creative exchange that happens in the sort of open pedagogical style, open pedagogical spaces that not just classrooms that are for one class and only for this kind of thing. This idea of the electronic lunch was started by Connor Berry, who is a master's student in media arts, and he started this thing called the electronic lunch. He received a grant to do that. This was as a weekly meeting of students at Michigan to get together and work on things like Arduino, Raspberry Pi, circuit bending, all sorts of fun stuff. But he also then took this into various high schools in Detroit and was working with students there too. And so this continues on today. My friend Kevin Alsweed runs this now, and we're hoping to replicate some of these kinds of things in the design lab on Central Campus, of which more in a little bit. And finally, Robert Alexander worked on a project of sonifying solar data, and is sort of one of my heroes. And I've known about his work before I came to Michigan, having done a little bit of sonification myself. And so, he's a media artist, and he has a PhD in design science, and is able to cross these disciplinary boundaries really fluidly. And I think that is one of the best features of the design labs on North Campus, is that there is this fluid exchange between different groups and different ideas, in the people who are just happen to be there. At different times of day, there's 24-hour access of people with cards, and so a lot of things can just sort of happen in there. And so those are a few things about it. There's a lot more available online, both from the sort of projects that were done, but also that this lab is part of a long-term study by Linda Knox, whom I mentioned earlier, about the benefits of learning in these kinds of collaborative, hands-on environments. And so a lot of assessment and a lot of observation and ethnographic observation to see how these are working, see how they might work differently, and see the benefits to students of working this way. And you can see more of that work at this link here. And I think these slides will be available, so if you don't capture all of that now, you can get it at a later date, or just email me, or Linda, really, who I think is watching this as well, and she can send you more information on this too. I'm just going to stop for a drink of water. So with this model of the North Campus labs and the really incredible success of the North Campus labs, the AUL for Teaching and Learning, Lori Alexander, and the library put in a request to the provost around the engaged learning theme to build a Shapiro design lab. a design lab here in the undergraduate library on Central Campus. And Central Campus is sort of the home for everything else that's not on North Campus academically. So a lot of the humanities, a lot of the social sciences, a lot of the physical sciences are down here. And there's not a lot of traffic between the two places if the students can't help it. Even though it's only a 5 to 10 minute bus ride, it feels like another state sometimes. And so this is when I was brought in, hired to, whoop. So Mike may have slipped, intermittently harder to hear you. Can everybody hear me okay now? Yes, yes, cool, okay. Thank you, Sarah, not as well as before. I'll try to get a little closer. So this is when I was hired to be the learning design specialist and help to build this design lab, starting from the models of things that were on North Campus, but also figuring out the needs here on Central Campus. Yes, Linda is there, and she is an awesome person, would be great to talk to. I'm not really moving around. So what I'll talk about here is our early sort of goals and ways to structure this lab and how we're trying to build this kind of space. I was hired in August, and the lab opened softly in November. And so we are still very much a new space and understanding what the space can do, what the space can offer, both internally and externally to the library. So this is what the space looked like. This was a space on the left called the Tech Deck. It was a sort of a graphic design production space that was closed for a lot of the time. One of the big reasons was because there's a poster printer there that could not be unsupervised. And so since that had to be there, if there wasn't staff there, the room was locked, which meant a lot of the time this room was locked. The racetrack of computers and a staff station in the middle as part of this larger first floor of the undergraduate library. What you can't see in this photo is the sometimes hundreds of undergraduate students who are sitting behind here. This space is one that right now it's 3:30 here, and it's actually pretty busy. By 6 o'clock, it will be completely packed, and it's open 24/7. And the busiest times are 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And so what we are trying to do is to be able to harness that sort of interest and engagement with the space to perhaps some different ends. And so what we did was we took this wall out and put it on the right side and made this a completely open, non-closable space. So this space is open 24/7 as well as the library. It's staffed roughly 8 to 9 hours a day. We're trying to try out some different scheduling, staffing things, as well as the development of the space. So since we opened up the lab, which was basically pulling the poster printer out and moving the wall, everything from there has been, what is our philosophy of the space? What is our goals of the space? What kinds of elements can we have in there in terms of technology? Because since it is a fully open and accessible 24/7 space, we can't have a lot of stuff that's not chained to the wall. And given that we want the space to be very flexible, having lots of stuff chained to the wall doesn't give us a lot of options to move things around. So with that, I'll turn towards a little bit more about the philosophy and thinking both about the design components of the lab and then the lab components of the lab. So I'm thinking of this as sort of a constellation around project design. And so this is a pedagogical space. I'm in the teaching and learning division of the libraries, and we just started a new division or a new department called Connected Scholarship, and how to work both with connections via wires and cables and connections via people. and how to build on the expertise of the libraries to foster different kinds of ways of working, engaging with technologies in different ways, and being more of that, I would say, that experimental component of the library, and that experimental and sort of forward-looking component for the library. So we think about this as a pedagogical space, and thinking about it, one of the metaphors that I've used, and Stuart Varner, we have talked about this as a community garden, and thinking about how this isn't a place just to go get something built for you. This is a place for you to invest some time in as well. And thinking about how that differs from digital scholarship centers. And I'd be interested to hear what you think about that this is not a development or a production space. This is more about designing your project and figuring out the best sort of foundation for your project, rather than being the people to help build that project. I've mentioned engaged learning before. This is a partnership space where, again, as I said, this is not a production space. This is a space where we are both bringing something to the table, and I'll give an example of this a little later. One of our core principles is participatory design, and so asking and inviting the users' opinions, feedback at every step of the way. So not just doing focus groups and we have some ideas, then thinking about it, but really listening and engaging with the people who are already there in the space, because this is not a brand new space. And Joan, there'll be some photos of more current ones of the labs, so there will be some more signage. You'll see that in a second. So thinking about different ways to do that, from having little survey cards on the tables, to online things, to short interviews, to a variety of different methods to try and learn from them. And we're learning a lot from Linda's survey or research that she's been doing over the years. Again, this thinking of this as a process over a product kind of space. We're not interested in building that final thing. That's not our first goal. It's more about figuring out the process by which you can do something. This is, and in this way, it's much broader than, I would say, a sort of digital scholarship center, in that this can be sort of a hub for a lot of different library services. I think I worked with people from every department in the library so far, and seeing a way that they can work in the lab and benefit from some, whether it's the design thinking or some of the other elements that sort of cut across lots of different disciplines. And also being able to learn from this one project that I'll mention, that was a project with our letterpress studio, is now some of that knowledge is being transferred to a tactile map accessibility project, to be able to move very fluidly between these different options. And being able to document those processes. And again, contributing to the sort of community garden metaphor, that we have this sort of knowledge base that we can then teach with to other people. And finally, thinking about this as less about a digital scholarship space and more about a digital literacy space. And how does that change our focus? So thinking about when I do a workshop, I did a workshop yesterday on Twine, the nonlinear interactive storytelling platform. We spent the first 10 minutes talking about what it meant to be open source and what it meant to be Creative Commons licensed. And so being able to have that sort of teaching be the focus, not necessarily, again, that final product. And we're looking at this in questions in terms of privacy and tracking on the web, or data literacy, or a lot of different things. This will be able to think very, sort of like social equity and social equality with this. And so talking about, if we're working with folks on social media analysis, let's talk about the ethical ramifications of using this type of data, and can this be made public, can it not be made public, things like that. So that's the sort of constellation of ideas that are sort of roiling around in the design labs sort of, I don't know, gestation over the last 6 months. As we go to the lab side, we've come up with this moniker of cafes, which I love cafes. So that the space is collaborative and creative, It's accessible both in terms of sort of low barriers to entry and low barriers to the stuff that's being used, but also accessible with sort of a capital A and questions of accessibility, from how do we make this more accessible to someone who has different learning styles, to someone who might not have the fine motor skills to do something like an iPad or to make a film. How can we make that possible? And as I mentioned, we're working on a project to develop some tactile maps for the library now. Flexible in terms of the different things that can be done in it. All the tables are on wheels. Everything except the really big pieces of equipment in there are on wheels and can be moved around willy-nilly. It's funny, there is someone overnight who comes in and straightens all the tables out, and I need to figure out who that is to have that person not do that anymore. It's an experimental space, both for the people who are working in it and for the library. The library can try out different things in there, whether that's different kinds of furniture, different kinds of feedback, doing user testing for different aspects of the website, but also like just exploring different things as part of their everyday work, and trying to cultivate that sort of space. And finally, sustainable, and that goes back to the documentation of the work we do and being able to then share that out with other people as well. So once we do a project, it just doesn't, live on a website somewhere and then eventually, rot because the links broke down. So being able to have that sort of documentation built into the project from the beginning. So this is a couple things of what it looks like now. We have a big monitor and computer station on the sort of the middle there. We have lots of these windows, so there are 16 total, which means we have 32 surfaces to play with. So we're trying to develop what's called a process gallery to showcase the creative process of students that are working and being able to, again, sort of show how you did something so someone else can make it with you, can try it out for themselves. There's a few library students there in the center. And then this is where we have the sort of the signage of the lab, which you can see from the beginning. This is an espresso book machine that is a sort of legacy piece of equipment that will be in the design lab for a little bit longer. We also have, you can see we've been doing some yarn bombing workshops. So people have been wrapping some pieces of the furniture for that. In terms of other technology we have a 3D printer. We have a 19th century letterpress from our friends at Wolverine Press. We've got a lot of small little electronics and things like that, but really our focus is less on the technology and more on the people. We have 8 students, 4 undergrads and graduate students who are working in the space with backgrounds in architecture and computer science, web design and things like that, be able to help with some of these projects, but also understanding the sort of commonalities, from a sort of design thinking perspective that could be helpful for any type of project. And so, my goal for this space is to really have something be different in there every week and have this be sort of constantly changing. Again, for the library to try something new out and to be able to, and to develop feedback mechanisms for that, and then also for the students to experiment with some things. We have this prototyping cart, which someone awesomely put googly eyes on. It's a whole big cart, I think, 6 or 7 rows of shelves on both sides filled with foam and foam blocks and toothpicks and Legos and felt and all sorts of stuff to be able to, get hands-on really early on in a project and think about what it means to diagram your paper with toothpicks and pipe cleaners, or to prototype a new bed with this kind of material as well. And again, signifying that sort of experimental space. It's also a nice de-stressing thing for both library patrons and library staff. So we have a design challenge every week. So these are 2 of my favorites from last week, where we wanted to celebrate the first week of spring. And so someone made a flower and someone made a toadstool, which I was really impressed with. The toadstool, which has some foam blocks and some foam circles and some pieces of felt and yarn cut out with a cork as the stem. So just a couple projects I've mentioned. That's our 19th century letterpress. We are working on 3D printing illustration blocks and type to use on that press. we have gotten a proof of concept with some harder material in our 3D lab, and now we are just finishing that up. And so this is, some of these are illustrations from Shakespeare's First Folio, and so we are recreating some of these illustration blocks from the First Folio. And then this will also then lead to some of the same processes for creating tactile maps, and then also creating our own type to 3D print as well. There's the Yik Yak Yak up there. We've had a number of students talk about wanting to analyze and archive social media data and Yik Yak specifically, and so it's given rise to some of these ethical questions about, is this really anonymous data? And the question is no. There was just someone arrested at a different Michigan university or this week about posting threats on Yik Yak, and so they could figure out who he was very quickly. And so what does that mean for public data and IRB in this, these larger questions of social media? And that's my friend Mackenzie, another user of the lab, who is trying out one of our $20 standing desks that people can try out to see and leave us some feedback on a post-it note around it. To be able to try out these different things, and again, sort of encouraging the different uses of the space and the different kinds of experimentation that could happen in this space. So that's what I have prepared, and I'm looking for, and I see there's a few questions already, and I'm looking forward to talking more. So thanks.
Perfect. So maybe I will have Brian also unmute, and we'll direct, some of these questions are for both of you and some of them are individual, but maybe we'll just start at the beginning. So maybe these are more for Brian. Who provides tech support for the equipment and staff at Curve?
We do the library. We have our own IT support team, and the only new position added so far has been one full-time tech support person to support Curve, but also some of our other innovative spaces. So we're lucky that we have our own team.
And Brian, how big is the total staff at Curve?
There are at this point, no dedicated staff to Curve. Curve is a space where librarians and others come and do projects. So we have students and student innovation fellows and honor students who staff there's a desk in there, and a few staff and librarians work in there, but it's a place where collaborations happen, but not a staff located there. One thing, we are currently hiring a digital scholarship person and another research data person to lead research data services. One of those people will have an office in Curve, and perhaps down the road there'll be a digital scholarship and data person in there.
Okay. A couple of questions about infrastructure. So who paid for the wall and other hardware? And I guess I would have the same question for Justin of is it the library footing all of the bill?
Would you, Justin, you want to go first?
Sure. So all of the funding for these came from that provost request around the Engaged Learning initiative here at the University of Michigan. So the library is funding this, but that money is new money from the provost.
Okay.
That is for the operations budget, the student hourly budget, and then we're also working with some other sources of funding within the library for some like strategic technology purchases and things like that.
This is Brian. So, wow, I'll try to make this as short as possible. We have a required student technology fee, and a couple of years back, maybe 3 or 4 years back to be precise, it was decided to take a percentage off the top, maybe 10%, to fund innovation. So our campus supports innovation. I will say that is true. It is not just lip service. If you have a great project and our president hears about it, or our VP for research, they will find the money. So we got the initial money from a tech fee innovation grant, which did not pay for a sixth of it or an eighth of it. Several folks got wind of it. The libraries reported to the VP for research at the time. He got wind of it, kicked in a chunk of change. Others on campus just rallied, came to the central IT, a VP for research, as I mentioned. The library did contribute a percentage, but it was truly a collaborative, get behind the library and let's do something interesting campaign.
Okay. There was a question about the process that you both have used to build good relationships, and that you've seemed to have the word out on your campuses that primary users are aware that you exist, know what kind of services to expect. Can you talk a little bit about strategies that were effective at doing that?
Go ahead, Brian.
Yes, so Curve had champions before it was built. We have some great librarians and others in the library who had already built some fantastic relationships with faculty. So when Curve went from white paper to charrettes with the architect, those 30, 40 faculty really were already on board. So and they still remain some of our loyal users, primarily in the humanities, anthropology, art history, English, anything spatial data related, so geosciences, public health, public policy, to do a lot with maps and demographics. I think that answers the question. It also helps that we have our own marketing. I said we have our own IT. We also have our own marketing communications coordinator within the library who really helps us with our social media and getting the word out about different events that are happening in the space.
So I've been lucky to get to ride the coattails of this success and lots of other people's here. As a new person here at Michigan, at a very, very large, decentralized, siloed university, our challenges here have been a little different. It's the biggest challenge for the design lab, the Shapiro Design Lab, is the folks who are sitting right outside our area, who come in there with a very specific purpose, which is to study, and could care less about what is happening that we might be trying to do. If I put different tables out there, they're going to use them. And so I think our challenge here is to go beyond the usual questions or needs or requests that students have, which is, more outlets, better Wi-Fi, and a little legacy thing that we had set up napping stations in our area a couple of years ago. And so the students still remember the napping stations and they want those back, which we can't do because the fire marshal said we can't. And so it's less about, getting people to come in. And this is actually something that someone else brought up that will tie this together. The different relationship between the production and the process spaces. I sort of want to position the lab at the middle of that, where we can give you a better chance of actually producing something by thinking very intentionally about the process. We have some staff that could help perhaps develop a proof of concept that could then get you a grant or something similar. So why I say that it's not a production space is because it's not something that a person who has an idea but has no skills or even worse, interest in actually learning how to make it, that they're not going to find what they want in the design lab. They're going to find a way to think about that project, critically, ethically, while at the same time having some strategies to go out and make it, but not in the sort of disinterested, I have the idea, now I just need someone to make it for me way that can often happen in digital scholarship centers. Perfect.
So we're sitting right about 5 minutes from the end. I guess I have one final question for Justin. So you spent a lot of time talking about process and thinking through it, and that it's not a production space. How do you refer to production? Do you do referrals to other folks?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah, we talk about, we at the Duderstadt there have world-class audio and video production studios. And so the project could start in the design lab and talk, like, I have a background as a documentary filmmaker. And so we can talk about developing story ideas. We can talk about different kinds of equipment to use and start talking about what kinds of mics and equipment would be good for this kind of thing, and then they could go to North Campus and actually do it. And so that's the sort of relationship. And I was talking about the hub and that sort of referral model. I think of this lab, and we're with this lab coming online with the other two labs, we're trying to figure out what our specialties are. And I think for the Shapiro lab, it's very much the early start of a project, and that sort of experimental sort of foundation laying. That then you could go to some place like the 3D lab, or you can go to some place like the production studios, or the digital fabrication space in the School of Architecture, where you can cut to your heart's desire, because they have we can't solder in our lab. Other spaces on campus that are more purposely built for these kinds of things, but don't have the expertise in the same way that we have in the design labs. So it's very much, I see the lab as a means to an end, not as an end itself. It's always, you can be in the space, help think of something, and then take that most likely someplace else that might have more of that specialized. There's expertise in the skills needed to make that, or the technology, or things like that. But being able to get folks in the space and then be able to talk to folks in our copyright office, or in our thinking about learning analytics, or a bunch of these different areas within the library ecosystem to help build up the library's expertise in different ways that they might not already be there, already be built up in.
And I guess the other question, getting back to the theme today, of do you feel like the name of your center makes it less intimidating? Is it language that's more familiar? Is it that just giving them an idea of what they can expect when they walk in, and has that helped with recognition around campus?
Brian, you want to go ahead?
Yes, sorry everybody, I put a smiley face by my name. I don't know if you could see it. I didn't mean to do that. But anyway, could you repeat the question? I'm sorry, one more time. I apologize.
That's okay. Trying to figure out about getting back to the idea of the name. Is it that it's making it less intimidating or more familiar in language that the researchers would use, or give them a better idea of what to expect when they're in there? And has it helped in differentiating yourself on campus?
Sure. Wow, I don't think we even thought about it in those terms. I think most people, students, and of course, Curve is open to anyone, undergraduate. We do like for folks to have a research project or something they're working on and not just hang out. We have lots of space for students to just hang out. Most students just know it as Curve. I don't even think they know it as what it stands for, that it has visualization and collaboration and research in the acronym. So I don't think we didn't overthink it. We just wanted a name that would stand out. And there were lots of, I've told others this, there were all sorts of interesting headlines in the paper. Here's a space that's ahead of the curve, and here's a group that, those kind of things, puns. So, but yeah, I don't think we really thought about it that much in terms of intimidation or encouraging students.
So with the design lab, the name was chosen because of the history of the design labs on North Campus. I have often struggled with the names of digital scholarship and digital humanities, and anybody who has spent any amount of time with me in this capacity knows that that I have nomenclature issues. But the design lab, for me, this was an opportunity to think about this outside of the scope of digital scholarship or digital humanities, which is the background that I come from. Digital scholarship work happens there. Alex Keener, our awesome digital scholarship librarian, and I are working on multiple things. We just hatched out a new sort of coffee hour kind of thing for grad students in digital scholarship. But that's not what I want to define the space. I don't want to, design can cut across anything you do. And so being able to think about the different elements that could go into the space, whether that's a citizen science project where you're analyzing images, and capturing the North Woods of Michigan, or running sensors on air quality and water quality, to, again, 3D printing, things for a 19th century letterpress, and a process that hasn't been done since the 18th century. Being able to have that sort of breadth in the lab has been very liberating for me, and not trying to market to a specific group. So the design lab has been much more conducive. The name of the design lab is much more conducive to the goals, the wider goals of the library and the wider goals of this kind of work.
I would just like to echo what Justin said real quick. I also have nomenclature issues. I'm not sure if I went out and advertised Curve initially as a digital scholarship space, it would have gotten as much traction as talking about collaboration, interdisciplinary, data visualization. Those words seem to resonate. I'm not sure many folks outside of our sphere of libraries and humanists know what that means, so I just would echo that.
Perfect. Well, on that note, I'm going to wrap us up. Stephen had said that he had dropped the assessment piece into the chat box. So if you could take a few minutes and fill that out. There's the evaluation link. Just 3 quick questions. And a good reminder, there was some chat going on about a list of these digital scholarship centers and what they're called and how they work. And many thanks to Joan Lippincott for pointing it out via chat, her paper that she's been doing research on from 2014. That is something that the interest group has also continued. There's been a continued express need. We thank everyone who's been able to join today and look forward to seeing many of you at ALA this summer during our panel. And many thanks again to Brian, Justin, and Stephen.
Thanks also to Elois Sharp and Sophie Skinner from ACRL, who are our support team, who made all this possible with their support. So thanks very much to both of you, and thanks again to you, Maris, for being our moderator, and Justin and Brian for joining us today and sharing all your knowledge and helping us start that conversation about, what is the name and what does it mean, and does it attract people or not do so, and I'm sure we'll continue to have conversations about that in the future. So thanks everyone for joining us, and again, we'll hope you'll join us for future virtual meetings. Take care.
Thanks everybody.